What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. Before we get started, I want to tell you what this podcast is all about. This podcast is all about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, helping you in all aspects of your life, and helping you overcome your fears by introducing new fears to you. Game on, let's go. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. But one thing to know about this book is it's not just for artists, because as a great man once said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. Pablo Picasso. And life is an art. So because of that, we need to learn to steal like an artist. And another thing Picasso said is, good artists copy and great artists steal. That'll make a lot more sense as we get into it. Now, if you haven't had enough quotes yet, here's another one. We have always been shameless about stealing great ideas. Steve Jobs. Like I said, life is an art, and because of that, what you need to do is you need to understand that you're going to steal your way to the top like a 19th century robber baron without the guilt of having to give away your fortunes at the end of your life. Now, as I said earlier, this book is not just about art, it's about life, because almost everything in this book can be applied to your daily living so that you can catch W's all day long. Now, he starts the book off by talking about finding things worth stealing. He says there's only stuff worth stealing and stuff that's not worth stealing. And one thing that's not worth stealing is a Saturn Ion, also known as a murder mobile. A Saturn Ion is a terrible car. I almost bought one, and then I did a bunch of research on it, and then it turned out that they had numerous failures in the power steering where you could not steer the car, and how are you going to drive a car that doesn't steer? That's just crazy. A Saturn Ion is a giant paperweight, and I'm on this tirade right now because recently I ran into this young lady who works at the coffee shop that I go to sometimes, and she actually drives a Saturn Ion. So if you know anybody who does, let them know their car is worthless, to push it off a cliff and cut their losses. All right, my PSA is over now. So when you come across things that are like the 6th worst car ever made, what do? You just keep moving. And then you find things that are worth stealing, and then you steal those things. And when we're talking about things worth stealing, we're talking about ideas. We're talking about practices. We're talking about stuff that's so good, we need it in our life. We need to copy it so we can learn from it. And like many of the greatest minds in the world, we take from it, not to plagiarize it, not to pass it off as our own, but because it's so dang good, it's worth stealing. Think about this. The Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, was really a bunch of ideas that he took from philosopher John Locke. And the idea of breaking away from the crown wasn't a new idea either. They stole that one from the Pilgrims. So here's the deal. So many ideas out there are stolen, and just because it's stolen doesn't mean it's not good. That's what I used to say when I bootleg DVDs, by the way. But I digress. You need good ideas in your life. You need to absorb from great minds so that you will create great things. Because what Austin Kleon says in this book is, you are a mashup of what you choose to let into your life. And currently, the Kardashians are about to enter their 5th season of televised stupidity. Now, I know I give the Kardashians a really hard time, but the reason why I do is I don't want you to become an idiot by letting them into your life, letting them into your mind. And here's the deal. If you do like them, I want you to know there are places where you can get help. Because we choose what we let into our minds, what we let into our life, the cool thing about life is you can choose actually your ancestors and your lineage as far as art goes and as far as your intellect goes. So what you can do is you can actually choose your heroes. You can choose what you learn through your books, You can choose philosophers that you gain wisdom from. For example, I've gleaned a lot from the teachings of Snoop Dogg, and sometimes I picture him appearing in a cloud like Mufasa and giving me life advice. But all jokes aside, the cool thing about life is you get to create a new story, and you do that through the minds that you're influenced by. I love seeing the story where someone comes from a family of drug addicts and they say, I'm choosing to be different. And they're doing something that's completely opposite of the family that they come from. They start nonprofits, they do all this positive work, they achieve academically, they give back to the community. And that's exactly what we can do by finding great ideas. And that's what your job is. You only have one job. We have more than one job. But you got to start by collecting good ideas. And one of the things that he says in the book is steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. So anywhere, anything that inspires you, you can steal from, whether it's art festivals, national parks, Chucky movies, which, by the way, there are 6 sequels to the first Chucky movie. And I have a question for anybody who's been involved in those sequels. Do you try to expunge that credit from your IMDb profile? Because I don't think anybody wants to be associated with any Chucky movies. But steal from things that inspire you. Steal from things that fuel your imagination. I'm going to share a few of mine on a serious note now. The movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. The movie Groundhog Day. I watched that during the COVID shutdown. It was such a great movie and really made me think about my life and what I'm doing with myself. The Big Short. Wonderful movie. And there's so many more, but I did want to give those a mention. Also, with TV, the TV show Arrested Development, the TV show I Think You Should Leave, which is on Netflix. Also, read biographies of great people. They are going to inspire you to also be great, and they will give you a blueprint of how you can live your life. If you're looking for good quotes and good poetic language, Letter from a Birmingham Jail by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Finding great quotes in general is one of my favorite things to do. I am unashamedly a quotophile, and you will hear me quoting great minds often on this podcast in real life. I love to steal from those great minds and add those ideas to my mentality and my mental frameworks and my life mantra. Go to museums, go spend time in nature. But what you need to do is you need to find great sources to take from and then do just that. And as you do, Austin Kleon says, find your heroes, then find the people who influence them, and then just go up that lineage. And what you'll do is you will become so much better off because of that. And your life will expand and your artistry will expand. And the cool thing about it is, as you find these people, what you'll find is that anyone in history can mentor you because you can learn from them, even though they are not directly in front of you, even though they've been dead for hundreds of years. And one thing he recommends is hang their photos up on your wall to remind you of their ideas, to remind you of their place in your mind and in your philosophy and in your artistry. So hang up pictures of Malala and Albert Einstein and Jaden Smith.
Keep my
son's
name out your mouth.
Holy cow. Will Smith is actually laid out in my podcasting room right now. This is ridiculous. This is terrible. All right, well, the paramedics will come take care of Will Smith, so let's get back to Austin Kleon. So he says, what you need to do is you need to be curious. You need to go to the library. You need to go to bookstores. You need to learn. And as you go around, carry a notebook and a pen with you everywhere you go. Because something might actually inspire you to write something down that you hear, that you observe, so on and so forth. And as you do, what you should do is you should copy your favorite passages from books, copy down poems, copy down things that are great. Believe it or not, Muhammad Ali used to walk around with a poem of Rudyard Kipling in his wallet. And the poem's name is If, and it's actually a pretty dang good poem. When I was a teenager, I wrote down a number of lyrics from Tupac Shakur, the song Me Against the World, and they were super positive lyrics, and I wrote them down on an index card. And you know where I got this idea from? I stole it from a friend of mine, who also probably stole it from somebody else. And my brother stole it from me. And we're all a bunch of kids walking around with these index cards of these words that speak to us. And this is a practice you need to do. And this is what Austin Kleon refers to as a swipe file. And a swipe file is basically things that you want to swipe for the future. And you swipe them because you know you'll want to use them in the future. Now, this might feel very, very intimidating to create a folder full of good ideas, but here's the deal. You probably already have a very informal swipe file in your phone. You probably have photos that you've taken, things that you screenshot that are really cool. By the way, if someone's swipe file is full of only selfies of themselves, I'm going to call that a red flag for $500, Alex. Because if you're telling me pictures of yourself inspire you, you might be a little too into yourself for my liking. Now, going back to it, you have your photos, you have your screenshots, you probably bookmarked things on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so what you need to do is create a system that works for you as far as creating a swipe file. And my take on it is just get started, start ugly, just like you start everything ugly, and then get it together and get it organized over time. Now, as I read the book, it made me think about this guy named Ira Glass, who is an NPR radio personality, who is a person who took forever to become who he is today. And one thing that Ira Glass did, which I think serves all creatives and all people in general, is he has this talk. It's like a 2-minute talk. I'll link the video in the show notes. But in the talk, he talks about how your taste is phenomenal and how your work in the beginning will not be phenomenal. It'll actually be missing the mark very much, and that it'll actually take you years to make something that resonates. And the way that you bridge the gap between your taste and what you make is by doing the work. It's such a good, positive talk. So please make sure that you check it out. And Austin talks about copying and how important it is. He says, start copying because copying is about reverse engineering. Now, you may or may not know the name Rakim, but Rakim is the godfather of modern day hip hop. He is a dude that came up in the late 80s, and his rhyming structure was so complex compared to all the other rappers at the time. And any rapper who's worth their salt has studied Rakim and are influenced by those who are influenced by Rakim, and those rappers include Nas, Biggie, Eminem, and the list goes on. Even great rappers have to copy because they're not great in the beginning. I remember reading an article where Kendrick Lamar talked about how he used to copy Prodigy from Mobb Deep. Now, Prodigy's decent. He's good, but Kendrick Lamar is light years beyond Prodigy, but he had to copy him in order to surpass him. And the Beatles, the same thing. They started as a cover band. They covered other people's songs, and that's how they ended up becoming the Beatles. By copying, they developed their sound, and that's what you got to do as well. Now, this whole time as I'm talking about this book, it sounds like Austin Kleon is advocating plagiarism, and he's not. So I'm going to read through the chart that he has on one of these pages to help you to understand what he's trying to say. He says, good theft honors while bad theft degrades. Good theft studies while bad theft actually just skims. And that's what you got to do. You got to study the greats to become like the greats. Good theft steals from many, bad theft steals from one. And he talks about this in the book. He says, when you steal from many, that's how you become an original. He also says good theft gives credit while bad theft plagiarizes. Yeah, you never want to pass things off as your own. Give people the respect due that they should get if you do copy their style. He says good theft transforms while bad theft imitates. And we'll talk more about making something your own in a little bit. And he says good theft remixes while bad theft rips off. So you can see the difference of what he's saying in his book of what good theft is and how good theft is the right way to steal, but also will help you to come into your own. And that's what I want to talk about right now. He says, steal the thinking behind the style. Not just the style itself, but what are they thinking as they're creating, right? Watch in-depth interviews of these people. Learn from them, their mentality, so you can become like them, so that you can develop. Because the mentality and the thinking is what makes them them. A lot of these people have written books and have books written about them, whether it's Steve Jobs, Benjamin Franklin, and most recently, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, which if you've seen him on a lot of podcasts recently, it's because he just dropped a book about success and about his life. And what Austin Kleon advocates is study how they became great. Because what he says is you don't want to look like your heroes, you want to see like your heroes. You want to internalize their way of looking at the world, because that's how you're going to end up having success like them. Now, there's a CEO that I respect very much. Her name is Kat Cole, and she has this method of thinking, which I think is brilliant. She calls it the hotshot method. And the hotshot method is basically thinking about someone you admire and imagine that they're in your shoes facing the same decisions that you are facing. And what she does is she thinks for about 5 minutes, what would this person do if they were in my situation? And this is really brilliant because it allows you to make a good decision like what your heroes would probably do in your shoes. And as you go around and as you steal and as you learn, what you need to know is a lot of your heroes actually want you to steal from them. That's something Francis Ford Coppola said. He says, we want you to steal from us because when you steal, you find your voice, and later, other people will steal from you, and that's what moves filmmaking forward, and that's what moves art forward. And Austin Kleon says in the book, honor your heroes by using their influence to make it your own and add something to the world that only you can. And that's why you hear anybody who's being genuine talking about how they stand on the shoulder of giants, because we all do. Every last one of us stand on the shoulder of giants. And it's because of that groundwork that is laid out before us that we can do the work that we do. And the best way to honor your heroes is to do that work, to offer up to the world the unique contribution that only you can. Yo, these dreams that you're pursuing, I'm talking about moving, I'm talking about contributions, what you just bring to this world after you go through up in your mind and you just find how they were thinking. I'm talking about your heroes, so you could just come through and you could just zero in on the thoughts that they done had, grab a legal pad and write down some notes. And that's what I'm saying. That's how you bring hope and a whole bunch of good things to this world, by just thinking like they do, see through their eyes, and that's how you rise. So come straight through and be your heroes and honor them by just doing the thing you can do up in this world. And that's what I'm saying, dropping these pearls, come out the top, and that's how it go, thinking right there, up in the flow. All right, so now that we talked a lot about theory and things that are a little less concrete, it's time to talk about what it is that you can do on a daily basis to create great art. And one of his ideas is to unplug from your devices. Here's a quote. We don't know where we get our ideas from, but what we do know is that we do not get them from our laptops. And that's John Cleese, an actor who originally gained his fame through the Monty Python movies. What Austin Kleon says is, it's a good idea to disconnect in general, and I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. And he says, yes, you do need to use technology in your computer sometimes, but what you got to do is you have to go from analog to digital and loop back to analog to digital and so on and so forth. And that's actually what I do. I've read this book years ago, and I guess that idea just stuck with me, because what I do is I read the paper copy of the book and I write notes in the margins, I underline, I highlight, and then from there I take the book and I type up the script on my laptop, and then I print out the script, and with the printout, I punch it up with jokes using a pen, and then I take it to my computer, I retype everything, and then I print it out again, and then I punch it up again until I get a script that works really well for me. And if you have to spend a lot of time on your computer, one piece of advice I've gotten from somewhere else is to take out some Play-Doh, play around with it, because something about physically touching things with your hands gets your brain to think better. And if you can't get some Play-Doh, just do something with your hands besides just typing on a keyboard. And he's actually a big advocate of boredom. He says being bored actually helps you to have good ideas. So do the dishes, take long walks on the beach, in the mall, whatever, is the same thing, right? Mow the grass, garden, vacuum, sweep. If your house is clean, go to your neighbor's house, vacuum and sweep while they're not home. And I'm sure they'll appreciate that, by the way, as long as you leave without a trace and you keep it a mystery on who is going into their house when they're not home and cleaning for them. It's all about being charitable and generous. And as you're bored, what you're going to do is you're going to find the work that you should probably be doing in your life. Here's a quote he used in the book. The work you do while you procrastinate is probably the work you should be doing for the rest of your life, by an artist named Jessica Hirsch. Now, when I'm procrastinating, what I do is I throw on a black security shirt and I sneak into rock and roll concerts. And I don't know how I'm going to do that for a job, except actually work for security. I don't want to do that. Forget that. That's ridiculous. Never mind. And as you're bored, he also says, do fun things that speak to your soul. He said that there's a time in his life where he stopped playing music, and it literally felt like he had a phantom limb that was cut off. And he said, continue to do the things that speak to your soul, because all the things that you do that resonate with you are a part of you and a way that you express yourself. And all those things can work to feed each other into improving your artistry in general. And speaking of things that speak to you, he says, build your own world, pick up books and objects that speak to you, tape things up on the wall, hang things up. And this reminds me of life advice that I've heard elsewhere, where the person was saying, you need to beautify one room in your house, make it a sanctuary, hang up Will and Jaden Smith posters and photos and anything else that inspires you. And as you surround yourself with beautiful things, build a world and things that inspire you, you also need to surround yourself with new things to make your brain uncomfortable, and surround yourself with people who do things differently than you. So my advice is become a mob informant. Boom. There it is. Them gangsters don't roll like you do, and you might learn a thing or two. Or you can just travel to a new place. Whatever works. All right, now going back to your heroes and going back to people that you admire, what he says is find smart people and follow them and see what they're sharing and pay attention to all the things that they have to talk about, because you might learn something great from that. Recently, I got the opportunity to go to a Strumbellas concert, which I highly recommend them live. They're fantastic. And I actually had one of their bandmates on my previous podcast called Young Legends. His name is Daryl James, also known as Close Kicks. And I decided to actually spring for the meet and greet. And at the meet and greet, one of the things that I asked them was, what is something that's underrated that should be more known that inspires you to create? And what I was trying to tap into is to find new things that inspire me to create that I may not have come across. And if you have the opportunity to access people and ask them what they think is great, then do that. If you don't, just pay attention to what they're talking about, and you will probably be exposed to new good things that are inspiring, that are great, and that are going to make you better as an artist and as a person. Another thing he talks about is finding the most talented person in the room and going out and hanging out with them. And also try to be helpful for them. Don't make it a one-way relationship. Now, I know a guy named Wonder who is a music producer, and he got the opportunity to interact with this guy named DJ Toomt. And DJ Toomt actually needed help with some sort of music setup. I don't know the exact story of it, but Wonder had the skills to help him with the setup, and then that built a bridge with him, with DJ Toomt, and they actually co-produced a song, and they actually won a Grammy together. It's that song by T.I. called What You Know About That. Since then, Wonder has been able to make beats for 2 Chainz, Drake, Lil Wayne, Fall Out Boy, and all of this was based on his people skills, his technical skills, and also eventually his music skills. And so that's what you got to do. Go out there, build bridges with people that you might want to work with, people you admire, people who are talented, and that will open up all sorts of doors for you. And if you can't have physical interaction with them, one of the things that you can do is you can share their work. You can write blog posts about their work. You can write LinkedIn and Facebook posts about their work. You can share their work on Instagram stories. And when you do that, you're going to get their attention. They're going to see you as a supporter, right? They might see you as a fan, but they will see you as a supporter. And most people aren't so big that they don't appreciate their supporters. I've done this many a times with people who I love their work, and I share it on Instagram stories, and then they share what I shared to their stories. So they're paying attention to what I'm doing. And that's what you got to do to get on their radar and just to give credit where credit is due. Another practice he talks about is creating a logbook. And a logbook is just basically a list of the things that you do every day. You know, what projects you've worked on, where you ate lunch, what you saw on TV, what movies you watched, so on and so forth. And what he says is small details will help you to remember the big details. And I like this because this is an easy habit building way of eventually getting to journaling. And what we've learned from Atomic Habits, if you listen to that episode, is you need an easy way to get started. And that's how you're going to get started. And that's how you're going to be able to build from there. And one of the ways to do this is to think about what are the best ways that happened that day, which will focus you on the good. And focusing on the good is a great way to live your life and to have good mental health. And if the best thing that happened that day is you got laid off or fired, that's probably a telltale sign you need to quit your day job. Now, speaking of day jobs, he does advocate making sure that you keep your day job because day jobs are good for you and you need them not just for the paycheck, but for the fact that it is better to have a routine in your life than to have a bunch of time. And this is actually advice that I heard from Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew was a keynote speaker at a conference I went to not long ago, and he says, don't quit your day job. He continues to practice medicine, and yes, he doesn't work 40 to 60 hours a week like a lot of doctors, but he still is in the game. And that's a good thing to do. It not only creates stability in your finances, but it also creates stability in your day-to-day activities. All right, so that's pretty much the episode. I'm going to end on a positive note. He says to keep a praise file because sometimes you're going to get discouraged, and it's a good idea to have things that people have said in the past that have been compliments for those days that you are having a bad day. What he does is he opens up his praise file, quickly looks at the positive things that people said in the past, and then he goes directly back to work. And this is really important because what you need to understand is you need 6 attaboys, attagirls to offset one negative comment. And negative comments have a more powerful impact on your mind and your psyche than positive ones. So you should definitely focus on the good and the positive things that people have said. And I would say temper that with if people give you negative feedback, but they do so to help you, then maybe you should take that to heart and try to improve from it. You can go and be so great by stealing from the people who you admire, and you will form the wonderful things you will do. Keep on grinding, keep on making, and you will eventually make some things that you are proud of and feel good about your art. All right, so that is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed my synopsis on Steal Like an Artist. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And if you are enjoying this podcast, please leave a rating and review. Both those things help the podcast to grow and get into more ears in the future. I want to give a shout out to my dude Siraj, who made the instrumental for this podcast. And I highly recommend that you pick up the book Steal Like an Artist. It actually has some great visuals in there, some hand-drawn stuff, and it is a very inspiring book. And also it's a very easy read, and it's one of those books that you'll revisit over and over to remind yourself on how to do this thing called artistry. All right, that's all I got for this time around. This is Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim. Hope you have an amazing day and an amazing week. And until next time, peace!